What happens when one of the most famous princes in the world clashes with America's sharpest late-night host in a battle of egos that spirals completely out of control? It only took 33 seconds after one single comment for everything to explode into the most shocking exit in talk show history. Stephen Colbert sat behind his desk, that familiar grin on his face as the audience applause died down. The Late Show had seen its share of A-list guests, but tonight was supposed to be special. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex himself, was settling into the guest chair, adjusting his jacket with an air of casual confidence that seemed just a little too practiced. "Your Royal Highness, welcome to the show," Stephen began, his tone warm but with that edge of playful sarcasm he was known for. "Or should I just call you Harry? I never know the protocol with these things." Harry smiled, but there was something tight about it. "Harry's fine. I've been trying to get people to drop all the formality, you know. Just treat me like a regular person." Stephen leaned back in his chair. "A regular person who lives in a mansion in Montecito and has a Netflix deal worth millions." "Got it. Very relatable." The audience laughed, but Harry's smile faded. Just slightly. "Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Everyone wants to focus on the money, the title, the privilege. Nobody wants to talk about the real issues I'm trying to address." "Oh, we're going to talk about issues," Stephen said, shuffling his note cards. "But first, I have to ask, because America is obsessed with this. What's it actually like having tea with the Queen? Is it as formal as we imagine? Or can you just, dunk a biscuit?" It was a softball question, meant to be light and easy. But Harry didn't laugh. Instead, he sat forward, his expression suddenly serious. "You know, Stephen, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This obsession with the monarchy, with the pageantry. It's all superficial. There are real problems in the world." Stephen blinked, clearly caught off guard by the sudden shift in tone. "Sure, absolutely. But you came on a comedy show. We do jokes here. It's kind of our thing." "Maybe that's the problem," Harry shot back. "Maybe we've become too comfortable laughing at everything instead of actually having difficult conversations." The studio audience went quiet. You could feel the energy in the room change, like someone had opened a window and let all the warmth out. Stephen's smile remained, but his eyes had sharpened. This was his show, his territory, and he wasn't about to let a guest, royal or not, lecture him about how to do his job. "Okay," Stephen said slowly, carefully. "So, you want to have a difficult conversation? Let's do that. You've spent years now talking about privacy, about wanting to be left alone by the media. But you've also done multiple interviews, a documentary, a book. Some people might say you can't have it both ways. What do you say to that?" Harry's jaw tightened. "What I say is that people like you don't understand what it's like to have your entire life dissected, to have lies written about you every single day. I'm using my platform to correct the record, to tell my truth." "Your truth," Stephen repeated, and there was a hint of challenge in his voice now. "Not the truth. Your truth." Which is interesting, because usually truth is just, truth. It's not a personal accessory. "That's incredibly dismissive," Harry said, his voice rising slightly. "You're being incredibly dismissive right now." Stephen held up his hands. "I'm not trying to dismiss anything. I'm asking questions. That's literally what this chair is for. You're the one who seems upset that I'm not just nodding along." "Because you're twisting everything I say," Harry insisted. "This is exactly what the British tabloids do. They take your words and spin them into something else entirely." "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" Stephen interrupted, and now the audience could hear the edge in his voice. "I am not a tabloid. I'm asking you direct questions based on things you've said publicly. If you don't want to answer them, that's fine, but don't accuse me of twisting your words when I'm literally just repeating them back to you." Harry stood up slightly in his chair, his body language becoming more aggressive. "You know what? I came here thinking this would be different. I thought you were supposed to be one of the good ones, Someone who actually cares about important issues. But you're just like all the rest, looking for a soundbite, looking for something to make fun of. The audience was completely silent now. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others were leaning forward, sensing that something truly unusual was happening. Stephen remained seated, but his posture had changed. He was no longer the jovial host. He was someone who had been challenged in his own house, and he wasn't backing down. "Harry," Stephen said, and his voice was calm but firm. "I have dedicated my career to talking about important issues. Climate change, healthcare, education, civil rights. I've used this platform to raise millions for charity. But I also make people laugh, because that's what they need sometimes. Not everyone has the luxury of being serious all the time. Some people work 3 jobs and come home and just want to smile for 30 minutes. So don't you dare come on my show and tell me I don't care about what matters." Harry's face had gone red. "I'm not here to be your entertainment. I'm not here to be made fun of so your audience can feel better about their own lives." "Then why are you here?" Stephen asked, spreading his hands. "Seriously, why did you agree to come on this show? Because if you just wanted to lecture people, you could have posted a video on Instagram. You came here because you wanted the platform, you wanted the audience, you wanted the validation. And now that you're not getting it exactly the way you want it, you're throwing a tantrum." "A tantrum?" Harry's voice went up an octave. "You think this is a tantrum? I'm trying to have a real conversation, and you're reducing it to a tantrum?" "You're right," Stephen said, nodding. "That was unfair. This isn't a tantrum. This is you being unable to handle the fact that not everyone is going to treat you like you're special just because of who your grandmother was." The audience gasped. It was a direct shot, and everyone knew it. Harry's face went from red to almost purple. He gripped the arms of his chair so hard his knuckles went white. "How dare you?" Harry said, his voice shaking. "How dare you bring my family into this?" "You brought your family into this," Stephen countered. "You wrote a whole book about your family. You've given hours of interviews about your family. You've made your family your entire brand. But somehow I'm out of line for mentioning them." Harry stood up abruptly, and for a moment it looked like he might actually walk off the stage right then. But instead, he pointed a finger at Stephen, his hand trembling with anger. "You have no idea what I've been through. You sit here in your comfortable little bubble, making jokes, pretending you understand the world. But you don't. You don't know what it's like to lose your mother because of people like you. People in the media who treat human beings like they're just content." The studio went dead silent. Stephen's expression shifted, and for just a moment, there was something like sympathy in his eyes. But when he spoke, his voice was still firm. "You're right. I don't know what that's like, and I'm genuinely sorry for your loss. But I'm not the paparazzi who chased your mother. I'm not a tabloid journalist. And you don't get to come here and use your trauma as a weapon against anyone who asks you a question you don't like." "This is unbelievable," Harry said, laughing bitterly. "This is absolutely unbelievable. You know what? I'm done. I'm done with this interview. I'm done with people like you." Stephen stood up now too, matching Harry's energy. "People like me? What does that mean exactly? Americans? Talk show hosts? People who don't automatically defer to you because of your title? People who pretend to care, but really just want to tear others down to make themselves feel important," Harry shot back. "You're no different than the people I left England to get away from." "Then leave," Stephen said, and his voice cut through the tension like a knife. "If I'm so terrible, if this show is so beneath you, then leave. The door's right there. Nobody's forcing you to stay." Harry stared at him, breathing hard. The two men stood there, locked in a standoff that felt like it lasted forever, but was probably only a few seconds. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or sit in stunned silence. Most chose the latter. "You know what the real problem is?" Harry said, his voice lower now, but somehow more intense. The real problem is that people like you have made it impossible to have honest conversations anymore. Everything has to be a joke. Everything has to be entertainment. God forbid we actually talk about mental health, about the damage that media scrutiny does to people, about the fact that maybe, just maybe, the system is broken. I talk about those things all the time, Stephen replied, and now there was frustration in his voice too. But I also recognize that there's a time and a place, and there's a way to have those conversations without being condescending to everyone around you. You came here with an agenda, and when I didn't follow your script, you decided I was the enemy. That's not on me. That's on you. So now it's my fault, Harry said, throwing his hands up. Of course it is. It's always my fault, right? I'm the problem. Not the institution that failed to protect my mother. Not the media that hounded my wife until we had to leave our home country. Not the people who send death threats to my children. No, I'm the problem because I won't just sit here and smile and play along. Nobody's asking you to just smile and play along, Stephen said, and you could hear the exhaustion creeping into his voice now. I'm asking you to have a normal conversation, like a normal human being. But you can't do that, can you? Because you've convinced yourself that everyone is out to get you, that every question is an attack, that anyone who doesn't immediately agree with you is part of the problem. Harry took a step toward the desk, and one of the producers in the wings tensed, ready to intervene if necessary. You want normal? You want a normal conversation? Fine. Let me tell you something normal. You are part of the problem. You and every other person who makes a living off of talking about other people's lives. You think you're better than the tabloids because you make jokes and you're on network television. But you're not. You're exactly the same. You feed off of drama and pain and controversy, and then you act like you're providing some kind of public service. Stephen's face hardened. Get off my stage. The words came out quiet, but absolute. Harry stopped mid-sentence, his mouth hanging open. What? Get off my stage, Stephen repeated, louder this time. This interview is over. You clearly have no interest in being here, and I have no interest in being lectured by someone who can't tell the difference between accountability and victimhood. You can't kick me off, Harry said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. We're in the middle of an interview. It's my show, Stephen said simply. My name is literally in the title, and I can absolutely kick you off. In fact, I'm doing it right now. Please leave. Harry looked around, as if expecting someone to intervene, to tell Stephen he couldn't do this. But the producers stood silent. The audience sat frozen. Nobody was coming to his rescue. He was alone, on a stage in New York City, being asked to leave by a man who had decided enough was enough. This is insane, Harry muttered, but he was already backing away from the desk. This is absolutely insane. You're proving my point. You can't handle anyone challenging you, so you just shut them down. I can handle being challenged just fine, Stephen said, sitting back down in his chair with deliberate calm. What I can't handle is someone coming into my house and disrespecting me, my staff, my audience, and everything we've built here. You want to talk about important issues? Great. Do it somewhere else. You want to accuse me of being part of the media problem. Do it on your own time, but you're not doing it here anymore. Harry stood there for another moment, his chest heaving, clearly trying to decide whether to say something else or just leave. The silence stretched out, uncomfortable and heavy. Finally, he shook his head, a bitter smile on his face. You're going to regret this. I doubt it, Stephen said quietly. And then Harry turned and walked off the stage. Not stormed off, not ran off, but walked with as much dignity as he could muster, which under the circumstances wasn't much. The audience watched him go, heads turning to follow his exit, like spectators at a tennis match. When he finally disappeared into the wings, there was a collective exhale, as if everyone had been holding their breath. Stephen sat at his desk, looking out at his audience. His expression was hard to read, a mixture of frustration, disappointment, and something else. Maybe regret, not for what he'd done, but for how it had come to this. He picked up his note cards, glanced at them, then set them back down. "Well," he said finally, and there was a slight tremor in his voice. "That was something." A few nervous laughs rippled through the audience. Stephen ran a hand through his hair, taking a moment to collect himself. "You know, I've been doing this job for a long time. I've interviewed presidents, and movie stars, and musicians, and activists. I've had disagreements on air before, but I've never, and I mean never, had to ask someone to leave." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "Here's the thing. I believe in having difficult conversations. I believe in pushing back when I think someone is wrong. I believe in using this platform to talk about things that matter. But I also believe in respect. I believe in treating people with basic human decency, even when we disagree. And I believe that if you come on someone's show, you should at least try to engage in good faith." The audience was completely focused on him now, hanging on every word. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if it was nerves or defensiveness or something else entirely. But what I do know is that I asked fair questions, and instead of getting answers, I got accusations. And life's too short for that. He shuffled his papers again, a familiar gesture that signaled he was trying to move on. "We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have our musical guest, and I promise you, they will actually want to be here." The audience laughed. A release of tension, and applause began to build. But as the camera pulled back and the lights shifted for the commercial break, you could see Stephen's face in profile, still processing what had just happened, still trying to make sense of an interview that had gone so spectacularly wrong. In the wings, producers were scrambling, trying to figure out what to do with the rest of the show, how to handle the media fallout that was inevitably coming. But on stage, Stephen just sat there, alone with his thoughts, a host who had defended his territory and won the battle, but somehow didn't look like he felt victorious. Because that's the thing about these moments, these explosive confrontations that everyone will talk about and clip and share. There are no real winners. There's just what happened, captured on camera, preserved, forever. A reminder that sometimes the most dramatic moments in television aren't scripted or planned. Sometimes they're just two people who couldn't find a way to communicate, who let their egos and their pain and their frustration get in the way of what could have been an interesting conversation. The cameras had stopped rolling, but the impact of those few minutes would echo far beyond the studio. Because in 33 seconds, after one comment about family and privilege and truth, everything had changed. An interview that was supposed to be friendly and promotional had become something else entirely. A moment of television that would be analyzed and debated and remembered not for what was said about important issues, but for what happened when two strong personalities collided, and neither was willing to back down. Stephen had held his ground. He had defended his show, his integrity, his right to ask questions without being attacked. He had done what he thought was right in the moment, what felt necessary to maintain the respect and dignity of his platform. Whether history would judge him kindly for it, whether people would understand why he made the choice he made, that remained to be seen. But in that moment, sitting at his desk as the stage manager counted down to the end of the commercial break, Stephen Colbert looked like a man who had been forced to make a difficult decision and was still processing the weight of it. The show would go on. It always did. But this night, this interview, this confrontation, would be something different. Something that couldn't be laughed off or smoothed over with a joke and a smile. As the lights came back up and the audience settled into their seats, ready for the rest of the show, there was still an electric feeling in the air. Everyone had witnessed something raw and real, something that broke through the usual polish and performance of late-night television. They had seen two men, both convinced they were right, both unwilling to yield, both walking away from the encounter, changed in ways they probably didn't fully understand yet. And somewhere, probably in a car heading back to wherever he was staying, Prince Harry sat with his own thoughts, his own anger, his own certainty that he had been wronged. Two versions of the same story, two perspectives on the same confrontation, and no easy way to reconcile them. The show continued. The musical guest performed. The audience eventually filed out into the New York night, eager to tell their friends and family about what they had seen, about the drama they had witnessed live. Social media would explode with takes and opinions and hot takes and counter takes. Everyone would have something to say about who was right and who was wrong, who handled it better, and who crossed a line. But none of that changed what had happened in those crucial minutes. None of that changed the fact that an interview had ended not with handshakes and pleasantries, but with a guest walking off and a host sitting alone at his desk, both of them having revealed more than they probably intended. The mask had slipped for both of them, and what lay underneath was complicated and human and messy in all the ways that make for unforgettable television. Because at the end of the day, that's what people would remember. Not the policy discussions they might have had, or the important issues they could have addressed. They would remember the moment when it all fell apart. The moment when Prince Harry was asked to leave The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. The moment when civil discourse broke down, and two people who should have been able to find common ground instead found only conflict. And in television, in media, in the court of public opinion, those are the moments that last. Those are the moments that define careers and shape narratives and become part of the larger story we tell about celebrities and power and the price of fame. Stephen had made his choice. Harry had made his. And now all that was left was for the world to decide what it all meant.